Sitting at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, Turkey covers an area 3 times the size of the United Kingdom. The 2 continents meet in the northwest of the country, at the site where Istanbul was built. The Black Sea's only outlet into the Mediterranean is controlled by the city. It's the Bosphorus. The city's strategic position is reinforced by the Golden Horn, an estuary used as a natural port. The city was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire and named Constantinople by the emperor in 7 BC, having hitherto been known as Byzantium. When the Romans left, Byzantium became the center of an empire that survived until the mid-15th century, before ceding to the power of the Ottomans. Constantinople, though, never failed to fire the imagination, and in recent times, during the heyday of the Orient Express, the myth lived on. In the 1920s, the luxury train made the legend more accessible to Europeans. In 1923, with the accession to power of Mustafa Kemal, otherwise known as Ataturk, came the new republic, and Arabic characters were replaced by their Latin counterparts in written texts. The new capital was Ankara, and Constantinople took the name Istanbul after the name of the old city, Stambul. A Turkish version of the Quran was imposed along with Western dress. The new republic was built around a secular society in which the army played a pivotal role. Although Turkey is secular, Islam is everywhere. It may not be the country's official religion, but 99% of the population is Muslim. Situated at a cultural crossroads, Istanbul reveals a surprising religious diversity. The city is home to a patriarchate, one of the seats of the Orthodox Greek Church. A sizable Armenian community may also be found here, also practicing the Christian religion. After being driven out of Spain in the 15th century, Jews found refuge here as well. Istanbul is the most populous of Turkey's cities, with the urban area home to 16 million people. 500,000 more people arrive every year from inland Turkey. But the population increase is not without problems. The old center of the city is only a fraction of the size of London, so every available space is used. To escape the overcrowding, the middle classes built wooden houses along the Bosphorus, known as yalis. High-rise apartment blocks have also sprung up, a solution that now seems the answer to the city's burgeoning growth. Recent projections suggest that by 2015, Istanbul could be Europe's largest city. The European shoreline can no longer contain Istanbul's expansion. Acting as valves, bridges facilitate the comings and goings. As a result, the Asian side is following the same pattern and growing as well. Along Baghdad Avenue, the world view is changing. The city bears testimony to a rich history, with Muslim architecture most prominent by its opulence and decoration. History still influences artistic creation and fuels intense cultural production. Jinxes are powerless against the blue eye. Thanks to the Göz, misfortune is avoided. Ever since ancient times, the Bosphorus has been a congested shipping lane. For both imports and exports, Istanbul is the country's premier port and the most important in the Eastern Mediterranean. While the success of the fishing industry is uncertain, the tourist industry enjoys an ongoing boom. The country's heritage has been restored, and pictures of historic monuments are seen all over the world. Old traditions die hard, with fresh cherry juice still sold on the street.
Cherry juice.
The Istanbul conurbation is 120 kilometers wide from east to west. And like the city of Rome, it is built on 7 hills. a landscape that complicates movement between neighborhoods. Istanbul is implementing a host of solutions to facilitate transport, using overground, underground, and air routes. Since 2000, Istanbul has had an efficient subway system, but it needs to be extended. Traffic problems are acute, and public transport does little to alleviate them. Collective taxis known as dolmuş set off once they are full. Traffic is equally busy across the Bosphorus, where the vapurs or ferries provide a shuttle service. Telecommunications unite the residents of a city that has grown too quickly. Here and there, the future has already begun, but elsewhere, the past lingers. Istanbul makes light of time in bringing together cultures and continents. From its very early days, Istanbul was a strategic site and much sought after. Its deep waters allowing the passage and anchorage of large-capacity ships. Early occupants realized that they were vulnerable and built battlements to protect themselves. They were not enough, though, to ward off the Romans, who destroyed the city in the 2nd century AD. Four successive city walls were built. When the space became cramped behind one, another was built further from the center so that the town could expand. The last was erected in the 5th century. This was the one facing the Turks 1,000 years later when they seized the city from the Byzantines. The walls were restored several times before, during, and after the Ottoman period. The battlements are part of daily life for Istanbul residents. Moats have been filled in and are now often used to grow vegetables, a godsend in a city where space is at a premium. The fortifications resisted invaders better than they did urbanization. Some buildings used them as foundations. Others salvaged building materials for recycling. Large parts of the battlements disappeared at a time when there was a shortage of stone. In fact, the facades of Ottoman houses were made from wood, a material that does not always age well. In the shadow of the city wall, traditional Ottoman houses may be recognized by their corbelled construction, meaning the upper stories overhang the street, supported by corbels or consoles. In this way, the interiors enjoy more space and more light. From Taksim Square radiate 4 large avenues. This is the heart of Beyoğlu, the nerve center of modern Istanbul. To stem the wave of vehicles, the city gives priority to pedestrians on İstiklal Street, with the exception of the 1930s tramway that runs right along its length. In the early days of the Ottoman Empire, the first European embassies were set up here. Today, passers-by jostle along a road lined with stores and boutiques. There's something for everyone here, especially if you enjoy the irresistible aroma of roasted chestnuts. For sugar enthusiasts, Turkish specialities are a dream come true. A confectioner by the name of Achi Bekir came to Istanbul in the late 18th century. And his descendants have continued to expand his range of subtle sweets ever since. Sugar, marzipan and pistachios reign supreme here. His greatest speciality, lokum, has been elevated to a work of art. It's made on the premises. Onde Çelayan.
You couldn't describe lokum, Turkish delight, as typically Turkish. It's really a traditional confection of the Middle East, for both Turks and Arabs alike.
The recipe for lokum is part of the national heritage.
Lokum is maybe 500 years old. It's a very old recipe. The present-day recipe dates back to the 18th century, when refined sugar started to become available.
Γνώριζε καλά τον τρόπο να βρεθεί και πάλι στην κορυφή της Ελλάδας. Οι αγώνες σταθμοί για τη φετινή χρονιά έπρεπε να κερδιθούν και ήταν αυτοί που θα έκαναν τη διαφορά σε σχέση με τους διώκτες των ερυθρόλευκων.
Although the city is modernizing, certain traditions are upheld as part of Turkey's national heritage. The hammam, for example. The Turkish bath is an ancient tradition and many establishments are several hundred years old. Hammams were conceived by Muslim culture, which insists on rigorous bodily cleanliness, and were indispensable in the days before households had bathrooms. The treatment begins with methodical cleansing. Hot water and a vigorous soaping leave the client inert. After a brief respite on the hot marble comes an energetic massage. It's a very physical experience as the masseur directs his strength into muscles, tendons and joints. Expert fingers find all the sensitive points. Another place of relaxation is the kahvehane, or Turkish coffee house, where the hookah take pride of place. It's an instrument widely used across North Africa and the Near East. And although its name may change from one country to another, the function is identical. Smokers inhale burning tobacco in the upper section through a long tube. Tobacco is burnt using glowing charcoal placed on aluminium paper. The smoke is then filtered through water to absorb tobacco residue. Such places are frequented primarily by men, although times are changing. Smoking hookahs is a shared activity, one that strengthens social bonds. Smoking may be accompanied by a hot drink. Coffee, much appreciated during Ottoman times, now has a rival in tea, often flavored with apple. While tea is a refreshing beverage, butsa is a nourishing drink. Typically Turkish, butsa, made from the fermented cereal millet, forms a creamy liquid. It is usually enjoyed on cool evenings in a glass sprinkled with cinnamon. As for böreks, pastries filled with vegetables and cheese, the most spectacular part is the cutting up. The real show is in the streets of Istanbul, where hundreds of merchants constantly jostle for business on the same sidewalk. Each has his own territory, and a neighbor's patch must not be encroached upon. The market leaders are those selling Milli Piyango, the national lottery tickets. Shoeshine stalls abound, and they offer more than just a shoeshine. In expert hands, a shoe can even change color. The method consists in coating the shoe with dye before setting fire to it to fix the color. It's one way to get a dazzling bright new pair of shoes. Working wool and other textiles is also an old tradition in Turkey. A good carpet will last for a great many years, but repairs are sometimes called for. This is a job for specialized craftsmen. Turkish carpets can be split into two broad categories, woven and knotted. Although carpets are not made in Istanbul, this demonstration reveals the technique. The threads hanging vertically form the warp, while the horizontal fibers make up the weft and create the carpet's motifs. Threads are knotted in different ways before being shaved off to create the pile. A carpet made of fine silk may contain 1 million knots per square meter, 20 times more than in a woolen carpet. Muçtat Ersavas.
Here in Turkey, when we talk about a silk carpet, the whole thing is silk. The weft, warp, and knots are all made from silk. Patterns may be geometrical or floral, depending on the origin of the carpet. We are really very proud of this work.
But what characterizes carpets made in Turkey?
The most important thing for us are the nomad rugs. In other countries, where carpets are made by hand, they also have cotton on cotton, linen on cotton, or even cotton mixed with silk. But in Turkey, we have a variety of origins and some amazing patterns that can't be found anywhere else.
Sooner or later, a journey around Istanbul entails taking a bridge. Galata Bridge straddles the Golden Horn at the entrance to the Sea of Marmara. The strong current draws many fish beneath the edifice, to the delight of the fishermen. Between producer and consumer, there lies only a single story. On the lower level of the bridge, restaurants serve up fresh fish. Deliveries continue throughout the day. Galata Bridge leads to a tower bearing the same name, built by the Genoese in the mid-14th century. It dominates the area where the Republic of Genoa prospered independently. Beneath the foliage of the hill at Eyüp, a cafe dominates the Golden Horn, where traditional Turkish coffee is prepared. In Muslim countries, Friday is the weekly day of rest. Turkey, though, is the exception, and Sunday is the day off. It's the day on which parks and public gardens are invaded by the city's residents seeking relaxation. Far from the pollution, the bustle and the din of the city, families gather around barbecues. Many young women respect the Islam dress code, although they apply it a little less rigorously than their elders. At the end of the meal, hot water for tea is boiled in a portable kettle. Turkish youngsters share the passions of children the world over. But the life of any boy belonging to a religious family is marked by an important event. The rite of passage into adulthood involves circumcision, for which traditional robes are worn. Before the ceremony, the whole family makes their way to the Eyüp Mosque, where they meditate before the tomb of a companion of the Prophet. Meditation is also practiced in this monastery of whirling dervishes. These monks belong to a Muslim brotherhood founded in the 13th century. Their camel hair caps symbolize a tombstone. They perform a dance with mysterious origins. In the Semahane, the dance hall, the dervishes commemorate the death of their founding master, a theologian named Mevlana. They dress in white, the color of mourning for Muslims. Tracing a circular trajectory, the dervishes spin around tirelessly. As they twirl on their left foot, they have a very specific objective in mind. Nail Kesova is the master of the dervishes.
He tries to tell the spiritual levels of mankind. And this ceremony, like everything from atoms up to galaxies, everything is turning. And we believe that they are praying to God. And among the saints, some of them said that when they are turning, they say, Allah, Allah, God, God. They are repeating God's name. So here we join to this universal prayer of the creation, saying hardly, God, God, and turning.
The dervish thus attains ecstasy and becomes at one with God. The right hand, raised towards the heavens, picks up divine grace, which is then passed into the ground via the left hand. The Turks positively worship the pigeon, deemed to be a beneficial creature, and offer it food and protection. The bird attracts a great deal of attention because it has been of valuable use in the past. During the Crusades, it was a messenger, reporting on the movements of Christian troops. Some pigeons enjoy freedom, others don't. This pigeon fancier's market takes place on a football field. Breeds are selected according to their ability to locate a pigeon loft. The pigeon's sense of direction is not fully understood. Yaya Galapkulu.
Yes, Turks like pigeons a lot. We've been breeding pigeons in Turkey for hundreds of years. For us, they are divine animals.
But to enthusiasts, they are more than mere messengers. They have other qualities.
Yes, they are domestic animals, both useful and ornamental.
It isn't easy to appreciate a pigeon's physical attributes when it's trapped in a cage. For the non-connoisseur, the best way is to watch it beating its wings. From the sky, the Sultan Ahmed Mosque impresses by its lightness. Up until the last century, it was the departure point for pilgrims on their way to Mecca. The domes cascade down to the courtyard at the entrance. The construction is both solid and elegant. The mosque was built in the early 17th century and quickly became a benchmark for Muslim architecture. Light seeps into the structure through its many windows, originally fitted with stained glass. Some colors have faded with time, but the mosque's luminosity remains unreal. The very special light is accentuated by the choice of decorative materials and by the sense of harmony they create. The restored stained glass, the calligraphy, and in particular the earthenware floor covering. The dominant colors of green and blue in the motifs have earned the edifice the nickname the Blue Mosque. Building the Blue Mosque was a wager, an audacious challenge aimed at rivaling the Christian Basilica of St. Sophia, erected 100 years previously. Its minarets were added by the Ottomans, who transformed the Byzantine masterpiece into a mosque the very day they came to power. The basilica is now a museum. The sumptuous Byzantine mosaics on a golden background remain intact. They associate Christian images with Muslim symbols in a strange arrangement from which emerge the names of Allah and Muhammad. On the minbar stood the preacher during Muslim prayers, and the niche known as mihrab still indicates the direction of Mecca. The layout wanted by Muslims for their worship was gradually introduced and respected the structure of the building. An alabaster urn was used for the ablutions of the faithful. The mosaics have now been stripped of the coating applied to them in the 18th century. The covering, ordered by the Sultan himself, doubtless protected them from damage and the ravages of time. Beside the basilica, a vast underground chamber acted as a water tank during the Byzantine era. The vault is supported by an amazing forest of columns removed from ancient temples. Two upside-down heads of the monster Medusa were used to level up columns of different heights. In mythology, the eyes of Medusa turned enemies to stone. For 400 years, just alongside these places of worship, resided the sultans in the palace of Topkapi. The building was erected a few years after the fall of Byzantium. Each sultan made a personal contribution, be it a library, a courtroom, or a garden pavilion. The fabulous objects embellished with precious stones and the vast kitchens give some idea of the lavish lifestyle led in the court of the Sultan. Jealously protected from prying gazes and intruders, the harem accommodated the Sultan's wives and concubines. The women were watched over by eunuchs. Around the favorite's court were distributed the bedrooms of the legitimate wives. Islam allows a man to take 4 wives, as long as he ensures their upkeep. The Sultan had 7, not counting concubines. It's easy to imagine that rivalry, intrigue, rumor was rife among the women of the Sultan's inner circle. However, private living areas were not safe from conspiracies. The Sultan's personal bathroom was protected by bars, because several rulers were murdered in their bath. The women of the harem were not always submissive. For example, in the chamber of the Sultan Murad III, who reigned in the 16th century, they imposed their own rules and influenced the decisions of the court. Topkapi was abandoned by the sultans for the palace of Dolmabahce in the mid-19th century. The building was inspired by the residences of the European monarchs of the day. Ottoman architecture had lost its soul. It was the beginning of the empire's swan song. Give or take a few details, this could be a neo-Baroque edifice in Austria, England, or France. The interior gives the same impression, and for a very good reason. The decoration was undertaken by Europeans who didn't hold back on baccarat crystal and bohemian furniture. But being Istanbul, the Sultan had to have his hammam. The marble work wouldn't look out of place in the Chateau of Versailles. When the Republic was established, the palace became a presidential residence. In 1938, the father of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal, died in his bedroom here. Istanbul is about power and religion, but also trade. The Grand Bazaar covers an area 3 times larger than Dolmabahce and is the pride of merchants. Murat Bilye.
Grand Bazaar, or the covered market, is said to be the oldest and the largest covered market in the world. It first established by the help of the Ottoman Sultans in order to create a safe place for the dealers, for the merchants, so that they could carry on their business.
Working here entails buying, selling, and bargaining. The gold and silver and plethora of riches makes the head spin. Some parts of the Grand Bazaar date back to the 9th century, but trade began in earnest after the Ottoman conquest. Fires and earthquakes failed to discourage the merchants, who worked within well-defined areas of activity. In times past, numerous spices and aromatic plants were imported, often from the Far East. Such was the case with tea, but the Turks now have their own plantations. On market stalls, products are sold according to shape, origin, and use. Sitting on the cusp of West and East, the city of Istanbul has allowed synthesis. The rarest essences and most subtle perfumes swirl through the aisles of the Grand Bazaar. The aroma of coffee has been floating through the air since the 16th century. It was the drink of choice during the Ottoman era. The juxtaposition of cultures has given rise to some original creations. Instead of setting religions against each other, the artist unites them in a single creative work. Symbols become mixed. The religions are manifold, but there is only one faith. Islam forbids the depiction of Allah or any animated images. Consequently, artists took refuge in the abstract. Since they weren't forbidden to write Allah's name, painters and engravers learned calligraphy. Seday Bostanchi uses the illumination technique to decorate her work.
Here, I'm just applying some gold. Afterwards, I'll use this instrument to make the gold shine. Then, with a fine brush and what's known as soot ink, contours will be made before applying the base paint. That's how we add the finishing touches to this work.
Floral motifs abound in the decorative arts. One flower owes its name to a Turkish word and its resemblance to a turban, the tulip. Artists use different oil paints floating in a basin of water. Unless acted upon, they don't mix. Once the composition is finished, it is quickly reproduced on a piece of paper. Marbled paper dates back to the 15th century in Turkey. Colors originally came from natural pigments dispersed in resin. In the 18th century, tulips proliferated throughout gardens and every form of Ottoman art. At the time, they were unheard of in Europe. The flower became the symbol of a carefree and prosperous era. In Turkey's history books, it is referred to as the Age of Tulips. Heading north along the Bosphorus is the Mecidiye Mosque, erected in an area formerly known as the Keys to the Bosphorus. Today, the Bosphorus Bridge is one of the keys to the gateway between Europe and Asia. Almost beneath the bridge is huddled a neighborhood called Ortaköy. With its relaxed atmosphere and second-hand booksellers, it is reminiscent of Paris's Latin Quarter. The other suspension bridge, Conqueror's Bridge, straddles the Bosphorus at its narrowest point. The banks of the Bosphorus are protected from chaotic urbanization by very tight laws. Heights of buildings and their distance from the water are strictly controlled. But it's an almost impossible task in a land where the tradition of gecekondu, building without planning permission, is a veritable art form. The game of hide and seek inspires dolphins and cormorants. With direct access to the water, the celebrated yalis, traditional wooden houses, have become much sought after and prohibitively expensive. Needless to say, authentic yalis of the Ottoman era are few and far between. But replica constructions bear comparison. May the 19th is the Festival of Youth and Sport. It commemorates May the 19th, 1919, the day General Mustafa Kemal declared the people's determination to claim independence. It is an important festival at which the army and youth movements give demonstrations of collective exercise. In the secular republic, girls and boys have the same role. It's also an opportunity to remind people how important the army is in running the country. The same military music, but a different era for the parade of the famous Janissaries. The Janissary Guard was an elite corps formed in the 14th century. Its exclusively Christian members served as the Sultan's personal bodyguard. By recruiting them very young, the Sultan hoped to secure their absolute loyalty. The Janissaries were formidable warriors, but their esprit de corps eventually worked against them. In the 19th century, they revolted, and the Sultan had all the rebels massacred. The elite corps was disbanded. The 19th century saw the face of many Istanbul neighborhoods change radically. Dark passageways were replaced by rectilinear avenues. Urban development was borrowed from European capitals. The resulting covered galleries provide quintessential indoor passageways for shopping and relaxation. Today, the bustle of the streets is fueled primarily by the restaurant business. There's something for every taste with a wide variety of ingredients on offer. Mussels are eaten plain or stuffed. Gözleme is a large traditional pancake filled with meat, cheese or spinach. It should be cooked over a wood fire. The ice cream man is a remarkable juggler and joker to boot. Here, an ice cream must be earned. In the Kumkapi district, fish is the main item on the menu. And musical entertainment is part of the bill of fare. "30 years ago, no taxi would go to Levent in the north of the city, for the simple reason that the area consisted of a few fallow hills. Then in the mid-1980s, tower blocks began to spring up. Since then, the value of the land has rocketed, and Levent has become Istanbul's main business district. This ultra-modern shopping mall duplicates the lines of a canyon. But the sport practiced here is known as shopping, not canyoning. Today, Turkish designers are highly regarded. In the fields of interior design and fashion, some have achieved international fame. Just a stone's throw from the 21st century shopping mall, traditional Turkish collections arouse comparable interest. The method employed by salesmen to show off goods and secure their takings is a local speciality. In Istanbul, vine leaves blanched in boiling water are stuffed with rice. And removing the leaves of an artichoke takes but a few seconds. The simit is a ring of bread covered with sesame seeds. Istanbul changes with the seasons. In May, there's great excitement in the gypsy district of Ahirkapi. This is Hidriles, the spring festival. The festival is a time to make one or several wishes, scribbled on a piece of paper. Wishes pronounced during Hidriles will be granted during the night. Success, health, love, anything is possible. Last-minute alterations can always be added, but once night has fallen, the die is cast. And to encourage fate, revelers party all night long. Half an hour away by boat across the Sea of Marmara lie Prince's Islands, an archipelago of 9 islands. They owe their name to the Byzantine princes who vacationed there in holiday homes or under house arrest. Büyükada is the largest of the islands. The ferry disgorges its passengers into another world. Cars are prohibited here, and the only way to get around is by bike or horse-drawn carriage. Carriages of every kind travel up and down streets decorated in the 19th century style. Istanbul's well-off families often own a second residence here. Many houses have been beautifully restored. They're built from wood due to the lack of stone. Amid the pine trees, it takes a great effort of imagination to remind oneself that the big city is barely 20 kilometers away. The herd cools off in the undergrowth. Since ancient times, shepherds' lives have changed little. Some scrubland and a few head of cattle are all they need to find happiness, just a short distance from the bewitching city. Beneath its Muslim veils, Istanbul provides an irresistible draw. Istanbul reaches out beyond the strait. It embraces 2 worlds, despite the maelstrom and upheavals of history. The city hangs by a thread, stretched between different communities. It is, though, a strong thread, one that binds together two close continents and two distant cultures. The city has used several names to tell its story. Hard to define. Byzantium forever.